There's nowhere you can hide, Spartan. Put as much distance between you and the truth as you want. It changes nothing. Pretend to be everything you are not. Teacher, husband, father. But there is one unavoidable truth you will never escape. You cannot change. You will always be a monster.
I know. But I am your monster no longer.
It's easy to think of God of War as a series about brutality and vengeance, about the blood-soaked journey of a man betrayed by gods and bound to rage. But beneath the chaos and beneath the violence and the spectacle lies something deeper. A story about transformation, about the long and agonizing climb from self-hatred to self-understanding. In today's video, I aim to cover Kratos' long and painful road from the tyrant he was as a god of war to the quieter, wiser, and stoic figure we come to know him as in the Norse saga. Kratos' story begins where most tragedies end: pain. When we think about Kratos, the thing that we associate him with the most is pain. However, his pain isn't as simple as we may think. It's not just about loss or rage or disappointment. It's a type of pain that no matter how much distance you try to put between it and you, it never really goes away. It lingers, gnaws at you. It reshapes who you are. A man who sold his soul for power, but as we will come to learn, power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. When Ares tricked Kratos into slaughtering his own wife and daughter, Kratos was robbed not only of his family, but something much more critical to oneself: humanity. Ares succeeded in his plans to shed Kratos of his humanity so he may become his ultimate weapon. And from that day on, Kratos carried that pain, that loss like armor, closing his heart to the world and letting nature take its course. He was a destroyer after all. Every scar, every scream, every god he killed was an attempt to cleanse himself of his sins. But even after killing Ares and serving the gods faithfully, and even after he once waged war on Olympus, the nightmares never left. The gods promised him peace, but the peace never arrived. They promised him redemption only to use him as a pawn. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "To live is to suffer, to survive is to find some meaning in the suffering." But Kratos never found meaning, not in the Greek saga. His suffering only bred more suffering, spiraling until he became the very thing he hated, the god of war. No matter who he killed, it would never lead to peace. When Kratos strikes down Zeus, it is this rage-fueled bloodbath. It's exhilarating to the audience. All his actions have led to this moment. When Kratos finally kills his father, should be a moment filled with triumph and freedom and fanfare. However, we are struck down by a horrific sight of Olympus in ruin. But for a moment, we do get a glimpse of good. Kratos had taken hope out of that box. Perhaps there was potential for Kratos to finally rest and put his past behind him. But unfortunately, that hope was buried deep under guilt and failure. Kratos only remembers all he had lost. The only option Kratos sees to end his vengeance is to be impaled by the very blade of Olympus. The gods, ever cruel, however, torture Kratos even beyond the grave. They would not allow Kratos to bleed away his sins, not here, for he is cursed. For hundreds of years, he would wander a world not meant for him. His only identity, the ghost of Sparta, cast a large shadow over Kratos. This was a pivotal transition time for the ghost of Sparta. Try as he may to put distance between himself and his blades, they were cursed to come back to him, again and again, taunting him. Sometimes your suffering is not meant to destroy you, but to be your greatest teacher, to humble you. Will it strip you bare of all you called yourself? And once it asks who you are, what will you say? What will be your rebuttal? In Greek philosophy, the Stoics believed that pain was not the enemy. Rather, it was to be treated as a teacher. Seneca wrote, "Fire tests gold, suffering tests brave men." Kratos was forged in that fire. The gods took everything and everyone. This fire would become what reforged Kratos. By the time we meet him again in God of War 2018, he is much older, quieter. Do not get it misconstrued. The rage of Sparta is still present, only dormant, fighting every day to keep that monster chained down. motivated by his son to keep his past and rage hidden. He would soon come to realize that the truth must be set free sooner or later. Kratos' suffering might have reforged him into a quieter man, but alas, his self-hatred acted as chains that bound him. The ghost of Sparta is not only haunted by his past, he hates the man who lived it, the man who killed his family, along with thousands of innocents in his path of vengeance. It almost feels as if his past was a separate entity, a bringer of death and destruction. He followed Kratos everywhere he went, the god who hated gods. Even in Midgard centuries later, that hatred still burns, not just for the gods of Olympus, but for himself. That's why we see Kratos hide his arms beneath wrappings, covering the scars left by the blades of chaos, a constant reminder of his servitude to monsters, and how eventually he became one of them himself. But the past has a way of bleeding through the cracks. His refusal to face who he was poisonous, not only to himself, but to everything around him. When Atreus asks about his wounds, his heritage, about the truth of godhood, Kratos shuts him down. He hides the truth behind a wall of silence. He believes this protects his son, but the sins of the father have a knack for catching up with the son. This silence only protects himself from all the shame and guilt he carries. Philosopher Carl Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This is the situation Kratos finds himself in. As long as he hides from who he was, his fate will always be close behind. This is a very interesting point in Kratos' journey in the Norse saga. Kratos insists he doesn't let fate define him, and yet fate is woven through everything he touches. His wife Faye knew this. She foresaw his path long before he did. She orchestrated the journey, the spreading of her ashes, letting Atreus uncover the name she had chosen for him. It was all in accordance with forcing Kratos and Atreus to leave the stave and further Ragnarok. Yet Kratos fights against this notion. Fate is a chain that he spent a lifetime trying to break. But in trying to defy fate, Kratos nearly becomes its puppet once more. When he kills Heimdall, that old fire flares up, the rage that once consumed his life. Except this time, he feels the weight of his actions. The Norse saga forces him to confront the question, what good is regret if you keep repeating the same sins? He still kills gods, but now he feels bad about it? Is guilt enough to make you a better man, or does it only make the pain sharper? We see here as the audience that Kratos realizes that growth isn't about abstaining from failure. It's to choose to rise differently. When Thor tells him, "We are destroyers, you and I, it's our nature," Kratos sees what he could become, a man enslaved by his own instincts, estranged from his sons, buried underneath the weight of his mistakes. Thor is the dark mirror Kratos has spent lifetimes avoiding. And when Kratos rebuttals, "We can always choose to be better," he's not just defying fate, he's finally defying himself. Kratos learns that redemption isn't about erasing mistakes or who you were. It's about accepting who you were and choosing who you will become, choosing to be better. Bearing every scar, every failure, every terrible choice, and still having enough strength in you to change. This might be the greatest defiance of all. Forgiving yourself enough to believe that you may become more than your past. There is a silence that follows the storm, a quiet that can only exist once the war within you has begun to settle. For Kratos, that war was never truly against monsters nor gods. It was against himself.
What can I say to you? I remember how it felt to take that throne. All that it meant. And all that it did not. A god of war, god of pain, of suffering, of destruction. And the one said, I chase redemption that I know I can never deserve. What does that make me? God of fools, a god of is lost.
A battle against the ghost of Sparta, the man who burned down the world for vengeance, who believed power was purpose and rage was strength. In Valhalla, Kratos is finally forced to confront his past self. The man who took the throne of Olympus, who ruled as the god of war, the god of pain, suffering, and destruction.
Should I, this same man, should I sit, take, proclaim, lead, place myself in service? In service? Should I lose everything and everyone? There's to be enough left inside so that I do not become you. I do not know. But I have hope. You are cruel and arrogant and selfish. But you are more than that. You have always been more than what others saw. You are more than that.
Here, for the first time, Kratos manages to figure it out. Hope, not as a certainty, but as a choice, a conscious act to live differently. Despite who he was, it is not certainty, it is a leap of faith. Kratos knows the rage and arrogance of his past could rise again, could claim him like it once did. But now, he has the right people around him. Atreus, Freya, Mimir, all allies who see him as more than his sins. Bonds that give him the courage to trust again, that faith is what allows him to step forward without fear that his past will determine his future. Philosopher Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not a master of himself," and Kratos has learned this through the fire of a lifetime of mistakes. Mastery is not perfection, it is awareness. It is the conscious act of restraint when instinct demands fury. It is the courage to forgive yourself enough to try again. Nietzsche warned, "He who fights monsters should see to it that he himself does not become a monster." Kratos has lived that truth. In the Greek saga, he became the very thing he despised. In Midgard, he confronts it, and for the first time refuses to let it control him. He kills gods, yes, but now he carries remorse. He feels the weight of power, but he does not let it dictate his morality. He has begun to choose who he will be rather than who he has been. When he tells his younger self that he is cruel, arrogant, and selfish, Kratos finally lets himself see the full picture. He finishes with telling himself that he has always been more than what others saw. He has been and is more than that. Kratos' mastery of self is not the absence of rage, nor the erasure of guilt. It is the ability to integrate it, to finally let pain be a mentor and a guide for what he feels he must do next without ruling him. Strength is no longer about domination, it's about restraint, empathy, and hope. I would like to leave you all with a quote by Marcus Aurelius. "Every man would benefit from feeling the burn of hitting rock bottom at least once in their life. Because when a man has nothing, then he realizes everything is possible." Thank you all for watching. If you liked it, make sure to subscribe for more content just like this one. I have been your introduction to philosophy, and until next time, think like a Stoic.
You could have walked away.
The cycle ends here. You must